Hello, everyone. Welcome back to Story Time. So, I feel like I've been hinting at this one a lot of how I've just been a CS major, and I feel like I was meant to be a CS major. And when you ask me about oh, what should you have done differently, or maybe why would you choose a different major, or do you ever feel like switching majors, or what do you see yourself doing in the future, or what defines you? It's just always been computer science for me. And I feel like I really haven't explained that very much, mostly because I was talking about it in context where it wasn't a personal video. It wasn't meant to focus on me. It was meant to focus on some other topic, but it keeps coming up. So as I make these videos, I discuss topics that I care about or that I think about, and that I can just reference the past video instead of having to re-talk about it. So here we are. And it starts with the history. So I was born, but I was born into a family of not necessarily CS majors, but CS oriented people, right? They cared about the math and the science. We're very, very much fact and reasoning based family. So we have feelings, but we're Asian. So a good argument is going to have more value in our household than good feelings. And that's mostly because you care about success. My family was always very clear to me, like when I was gaming as a wee lad, that you can game, you can have fun, you can even, get really good at gaming and try out for pro teams, but you need to get your degree, you need to get a stable living, you need to give us proof that you can go out there and live on your own before you go pursue some passion, some hobby, which I think was completely fair, right? Like they're subsidizing me, they're paying for my living. They're not paying to take a gamble on me. They're paying to get me the fuck out of the house. And it's like even if you didn't ask to be born, I still have this deep gratitude and responsibility to my family to become somebody who I believe that I'm meant to be. And part of that means being able to enable myself to live. And I knew that CS is a very lucrative career, and also know that that was where my network was at. Dad was a network engineer. My sister, like when she left the household, her analytical thinking that we adopted from our father also was oriented towards CS, and that happened to my eldest sister too. And yeah, we just grew up with this guy who was, very reasonable, very analytical thinker. And from a very young age, I was always very curious. Like you're that kid who keeps asking why, and you keep getting more answers and more answers. And he would answer them to the best of his abilities until either it was inappropriate for him to answer. Sometimes you go down a rabbit hole which you don't really want to tell a 10-year-old, and or it there was no good answer. Like if you ask what's a rock made of, I'm like, oh, it might be made up of these different layers, mostly carbon, maybe lithium, hydrogen, and maybe oxygen trapped in there. And then it's like, okay, what's that made of? And you're like protons, neutrons, all that good stuff. And then you're like, okay, what's that made of? Like quarks. And then what's after quarks? You don't know. Is there really space between atoms? Space has to exist somewhere. What does it mean for there to be nothing? My dad, he didn't have a good answer to that. No one does. So yeah, he tried. He really did. But it also meant if I ever had a problem, he wouldn't really listen, in the sense where it's you ever just talk to somebody and they just want to be heard, and or they just want to vent, and they're only giving you what they're telling you, so you don't live their life or have their whole picture or have what they're feeling, so you kind of just say whatever you have from your own experience. It's like that. But my dad never did that with me. He was just like, okay, so here's this thing that you're worried about, here's this thing that you're thinking about. And instead of being like, damn, I'm really mad that I got an F on that test or some shit, I was like, okay, let's see what we can do about it next time. Let's make it actionable. Let's make it progressive. And action items, if you've ever found out in meetings, are so important. And I was just always put into that problem solving mindset where you have a problem, now you're just looking for solutions, because you can't make up the damages of the problem. You can only be better next time. A sorry doesn't mean anything unless you actually are better coming out of it. So yeah, I think that maybe me a bad listener from as a boyfriend, but it did kind of push me into always looking at problems as something that we should remedy, always orienting myself towards that engineering design process. He was like, never do more work than you have to do. If somebody has a solution out there, that back for his day and age, it was Stack Overflow. Now it's ChatGPT and Claude. But yeah, it's you don't want to do more work than you have to do. If the solution already exists out there, focus on the problems that only you uniquely can solve. And that doesn't mean I always outsource my cognition. I tried to make it so I could think about things on my own because, well, uh, you need to take tests, and, have a brain. But yeah, there was just very much an intentional effort where I wanted to solve problems, and I always looked at things that were difficult as something that I wanted to solve. And that's kind of like the crux of CS. And I did it in a very analytical, top down way where it's like, okay, he called it functional decomposition, where you start with, okay, what can I do? And then you move on into like, okay, so what's the ask? What are our abilities? And you meet somewhere in the middle, right? So for CS, that always was, it's like, okay, I have these statements that I can work with, or I have this data, or I have this line of people who have these skills. I want to make a full stack project. I can assign tasks to tailored to these individuals, and I need our core loop to work this. It needs to have this latency because he was a network engineer, and he always worked on that end. So it's like just very clearly defining your ask and your parameters. Like that's always what it was for me. Like if it was soccer, it was like, okay, bro, this guy's going down line, and he always goes down line. I'm faster than him. Let him just go down line, and he's not dangerous, and he's not making space, and I can cut off his cross, and I just don't ever let him cut in. And that was the solution, And what can I do? I just stand in the middle, right? I just let them run down line, and that's how it was for me. So yeah, I just always grew up with that problem solving mindset, very generally, and I like enjoyed challenges. I like things that were difficult. Like, I was naturally good at track and field, so I liked doing that to win. But I fucking sucked at soccer, and I liked playing soccer because I got better at it, even though I was sucked and terrible at it. And now, like I'm decent at things like pickleball and ping pong and like racket sports. Oh, they come so naturally to me, but they give me joy. Like I enjoy them. They're fun. They're party games. But in terms of like competitive fulfillment, I need it to be like soccer or track where I know there's levels to it and I can keep getting better, and I know I can keep getting better in a very clearly defined way, at least that I understand. And I like that for CS too. It's like you look at it and you use like no one uses master's theorem, but a lot of people use big O to determine your runtime efficiency or your memory efficiency, or you can literally just look at how intensively it is. Like you open up task manager and you're like, oh wow, this is really just shitting all over my computer. Like you can see how good your program is in terms of how resource intensive it is, and not in terms of it actually solves your problem, right? Like, oh no, my reinforcement learning algorithm only can decide the difference between a B and a 3, but it can't do an upside down 3 or an upside down B. So yeah, it's just stuff that you think about. Oh wow, I'm about to get owned right there. But it really was for me just, I like linear progress. I like progress that I can track. I like knowing for sure certain things. Like I run my program 1,000 times, it's gonna run the same every single time. And as I'm getting more into machine learning, it's starting to feel like that less and less. It's more stats. It's like it doesn't make me as happy. But I grew up as an anxious kid. I wanted control over my environments. I wanted to make sure that the things that I was doing, I wasn't living in fear of things always going south. And then I eventually developed like risk management. Like I got more used to things not being perfect, to things not going to be guaranteed, and still being willing to take that risk. But I still liked the comfort of just knowing objectively, like I have this GPA, I've made these projects, I've had this impact. I know for sure that I am better than like one of my peers, or that I'm doing better in this scenario than something else, or that my solution is better than yours, right? There's nothing subjective about it. There's no like, hey, trust me, bro. It's just, and that gives me comfort. That helps me sleep at night, especially like leaving my project and it's not going to deteriorate or like die in the garage, or somehow the electricity gets funneled outside of where it's supposed to be on that 1% chance. You ever hear about how electrons can just technically be anywhere? It's that. I just like the comfort of knowing that I could have a functional project, and then I go to bed that night and I wake up and it works exactly the same. And all of these factors, along with the problem solving. Also, I was doing CS camps like very young. I learned JavaScript in first grade, and then I made my own website. First HTML, CSS based stuff around third grade, and I actually like finalized it around fifth. And then I started learning Java and Python in middle school, and then I had like a 3 year hiatus all the way till like junior year, and then I actually started getting back into coding, rediscovered my love for it, and here we are now as a ripe CS major in college. And so yeah, but I just had the support too. And whenever I talked to my family and they're talking about, like, I think one of my sisters worked at like an educational facility, not like actually teaching people, but providing SaaS for, there I go, software as service, sorry, as a service, providing a SaaS for like Remind, basically. If you've heard of that informational app, it was basically that. It just helps people organize like club meetings or whatever. It's like, we all have the messaging apps like Slack and Discord. And it's like no one's ever happy about any of them. It's just that. And listening to her talk about like how they had to scale it because they were getting more users and more traction. And if you're not aware, software as service generally means that you provide everything that includes like the compute, hardware, host, latency. So as long as somebody has connection to like Wi-Fi or service, they should be able to use your service without needing to have any like servers or like data farms or anything. If you're more on the machine learning data science side, so they needed to scale. Like literally, they just needed more hardware, and they also needed to keep improving their latency because it's like maybe somebody procrastinated and they have a club meeting and it's in like 10 minutes, or they want to push that out to their users and like sometimes it fails and it's not out there, and which isn't a problem for like the majority of people who provide a service, but it was because they were a startup and they were hosting like, literally on local compute, like they're like a MacBook or something. So yeah, it was. I'm going on a tangent now. Whoopies. But it was just very cool to listen to my dad talk about all his latency stuff. I think he gave me a stat where it's like he was on teams across his career that he's still working, by the way, but no longer people are just building the internet, where he built like more than 70% of the internet, or he was a part of building the internet. Like, of course, it wasn't all him. And I was just like, wow, like infrastructurally, that's a very cool idea. And then my sisters, they go off to college and they continue to do more CS. And I'm hearing about my middle sister was doing some really cool machine learning projects. My eldest was doing some really cool stuff with scale. And I was just like, wow, this is just very interesting stuff. But I had no fucking clue what they were talking about, and they dumb it down for me. That was a terrible feeling. And I just wanted to know what they were talking about so bad, because CS, it's very jargon heavy. There's a lot of shit that you just need to know, proprietary knowledge. Like if I had a list of all the acronyms that I've learned in research alone, bro, I would be geeking. Or whenever you see those Instagram reels, it's like, oh, B2B to SaaS, and now you have, and I feel like most people know like full stack, front end, back end, and then there's all the different coding languages, and like all the front end is like basically some subsidiary of JavaScript, and you have to know about the internal coding stuff too, like about like data, your format like a JSON-L or a CVS file, and they talk about columns and rows a lot, and you need to take linear algebra to really understand a lot of what people are talking about nowadays. Like fine tuning is based off of a lot of matrix multiplication. So, okay, tangent, holy tangent. But yeah, it's just a lot of knowledge that you need to have, because people need to build from the knowledge base. They don't want to teach you every single time they're talking to you. And there's a lot of niches too. So it just gets more exclusive as you get more into one particular domain. So my family was like that safe space where like they would teach and talk to each other, and that was pretty cool. But yeah, I just wanted to be a part of it, I guess. I felt left out. And now we're here. And I'm actually a CS major, and I still like keep wanting to do it. I'm unfortunately cooked. I'm set to graduate in 3, and then if I do a 4+1 program, then I'm in my undergrad, by the way. Then I would be able to get my master's. But I'm too deep into CS now, where if I switch majors, I'm going to have to take more units, and like I've done too many major units basically, and it doesn't transfer very well to anything other than data science. But I'm done with math, so I don't want to have to take more stat if I switch to data science or anything like that. So I'm like, I'm locked in, And I also meant that like last year was my only year that I could like transfer to another school. Like that would make sense. And yeah, so I feel like this is a very weird story time, just a recap of my life. It wasn't like one bona fide story. It was more just a lot of my lived experience, like as a kid. But it was that environment that I grew into where people always wanted to problem solve. There's a difficulty of expectations where you're talking to someone and they just want to get their feelings heard, or you're talking to someone and you actually want to solve a problem. And there's a disconnect there. Now people are mad at you, but you don't really know why because no one really explains that to you, especially if you're me. And the people in CS, they always come in there with a consistent mindset of like, we are here to solve problems. The only reason I'm communicating with you is because I can't solve this problem on my own, or it's too big of a task on my own. I don't really want to do it, and I want to work better as a team. And it's something which a lot of CS people struggle with because you build projects like all on your own. And yeah, and that clear communication and that common tongue. Like you could say that's true about any individual, but sorry, any like major or anything, but for me it particularly resonated that there's a common purpose, there's common expectations, you can clearly define people's roles and what they do. Anybody can read somebody else's code and understand what it does. Like for UI UX, you just see the website. For the backend stuff, it's like you're probably gonna output the terminal if you're running tests, or you like just mock up a little UI, but a lot of people just like to export graphs. And then you can actually just see what your runtime performance is and all that good stuff. Oh, and your outputs, of course. Whoopies. But it's cool to just see all of it and know for certain what you're actually looking at, instead of like here's our performance metrics. It's like we had this much uptime of people actually working, and then this person, they contributed this project, and like we don't really know how good it's doing yet. We'll find out next quarter. It's annoying. That pisses me off. There's too much time before you actually know what your performance, what your success is. And I know that my shit works, and whether or not people use it or not, it's just like outside of my scope, right? So, so yeah, okay. I feel like I'm rambling now. So it's really ranting, but if I had a solidified claim of like why I did CS, it was probably just because I grew up around the problem solving mindset. People were very open with me about information. I like information. I think CS is considered in the realm of information science. Some people kind of just group them together, and I firmly believe in just knowing more things. And a problem solving process, just being able to put label and reason and order to the way that we solve problems, like it helps me. It helps me sleep at night, and I like the consistency of it, and I like the people in it. I know, crazy, because we have a clear expectations of how you want to talk and interact, and also of the knowledge base or domain that you're working in. Of like, it's very clearly defined if you're cybersecurity, if you're more data science, if it's more handling and operating with data, drawing conclusions from data, or if you're more computer science, if you're actually about the problem solving, about you working on the software side, or the software engineering, or EEX, or not EEX, sorry, or electrical engineering. It's just like there's very clear definition, or computer eng is somewhere in between. There's just very clear definitions of who you are as an individual and what you are supposed to know, and you can work with that. And it feels very natural to me. I guess I should also say, just because of the people that I grew up around, I was hearing those conversations very early on. I had that context also very early on. I was very rootly developed in people who valued CS and problem solving and that analytical thinking. And maybe I didn't leave a lot of room for emotions, but I'm like, it's just a computer. Like, it's just going to work. And I liked that feeling. So, yeah. I don't know. Helps me sleep at night. That's about it. Okay. No more ranting. Bye-bye.